All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Um, yeah, I just wanted to do this lesson. It is pretty much addressing a comment that was left on this video that I did a couple of days ago, entitled "Food Prices to Jump Between 8% to 20%." And the comment was left by Donald Castro 22 hours ago. And 1 second. All right. Um, so he says here, Shalom Ak, in them days when all hell breaks loose, I know the script says don't kill, but what if you're in a situation where that might happen? Would that be going off? I mean, are we allowed to defend ourselves? And I don't know. I'm not familiar with this individual, Donald Castro, so I don't know. It could be an agent, could be actual brother who's asking a question. But what I did was I went through, and gathered a couple of precepts to address this comment, because nevertheless, it's still a um, a relevant, point. Okay, which during the time of Jacob's trouble, we don't know exactly what condition we're going to be in, but there will be, certain situations where your life will be threatened, and in that point, you'll see how the Lord has you go about handling it. However, like I said, I have a few precepts in here because the first part I want to deal with is killing, right? Or better yet, taking a life. Okay, let me put it like that, because taking a life, there's different ways, so to speak, when you deal in the scriptures. All right, because there's a difference between somebody being put to death, like somebody being killed, and somebody being murdered. Okay, and so that's what I'm going to first address. Yeah, that's what I first want to address here. So we're going to start with the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 13. In the law, and it says here, Exodus 20 and 13, straight to the point, thou shalt not kill. Okay, thou shalt not kill. So now in Exodus 20 and 13, when you go into the word kill, in the Hebrew, it's ratazach. Okay, ratazach. And with the blue letter, they sort of throw in um many words into the definitions, but you can pretty much get the idea that the word ratazach here means to murder. Okay, as you can see, to murder, premeditated, right? Now they threw in accidental, but really this would be premeditated, because there's a law that deals with what happens if somebody gets put to death by accident. If you take a life, that's why I emphasized phrasing it as in taking a life, because you can take someone's life by accident. And so in the book of Numbers, the 35th chapter, which will also deal with that, it covers taking a life, okay, accidentally. But here in Exodus 20, Exodus 20, 20 and 13, it's dealing with murder, okay? It says here, slayer intentional, to murder, assassinate, murderer, assassin, to be killed. So Exodus 20 and 13 says, thou shalt not kill. In the Hebrew, the word there is ratazach, which is murder. Thou shalt not murder. Okay. And murder is premeditated. So you, when you murder somebody, I'll give you an example. You premeditate, maybe this individual might have said some things to you that you didn't like. So you in your mind, you say, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna find this guy. I'm gonna wait on him. I know what time he gets out of work, and then I'm gonna pull up on him. I'm gonna shoot his ass, right? Like a lot of these gangs do. They murder each other all the time. And an example is King David, right? When after he had committed adultery with Uriah the Hittite's wife, he had Uriah the Hittite murdered because it was premeditated that he said he sent that letter to Joab telling him to put Uriah in the hottest part of the battle, knowing that there was a very high chance that that would cause Uriah to lose his life. So it was premeditated. Okay, so in Exodus 20 and 13, the law says you're not supposed to murder. Okay, you're not supposed to premeditate putting one to death, in that sense. Now, there's other forms of taking a life, which when you go into the Hebrew word for that is also different. Before I move on to that, I'm just gonna keep this part open. So we're dealing with the first word in Exodus 20 and 13, which is ratizach, and that's murder. And the next one is in Exodus, the 4th chapter, and the 24th verse. Now, in Exodus 4 and 24, this is when the Lord was about to put Moses to death because he hadn't circumcised his son. And so Zipporah, well, it says it right there, she took the sharp stone and circumcised him. Now, in verse 24, it says, and it came to pass by the way in the inn that the Lord met him and sought to kill him, which was Moses. So when you look up the word kill here, you'll notice that it's not ratizach. The word kill here is mawat or mawath. Okay, mawath, which here says to die, kill, have one executed, to die as penalty, to be put to death, to die, perish, to die prematurely by neglect of wise moral conduct, to kill, put to death, to kill, put to death, to die. So you notice there's no murder in here. Okay, so now there's two Hebrew words that are ways in which one's life can be taken. All right, and the one is murder, which is ratizach, and the other one is mawath, which is to kill. So an example of mawath would be if you committed adultery and you were caught and you were put to death. That wouldn't be murder. That wouldn't be that somebody premeditated to find you and slay you for whatever reasons they had in mind, whether you had angered them or stole from them or I don't know, whatever the case may be, right? But instead you did something and you were put to death as a penalty. Because if there was no differentiation, then that would mean that anybody that put anybody else to death for whatever cause would have committed murder, would have been in violation of Exodus 20 and 13, right? So that would mean that when, for example, we had to go to war, we would be violating Exodus 20 and 13. That would mean that Judas Maccabees and the Hasmonean dynasty, the Hasmonean family, they would have been violating Exodus 20 and 13. And I also have an account of that. Okay. So there was a differentiation between the two because according to the law, you're supposed to, when if somebody goes off, if somebody commits a sin worthy of death, they're supposed to be put to death. So would that make those that are carrying out that judgment, would that make them murderers? No, because there's a difference between murder and execution or, being put to death based on breaking the law or going off, right? So that's the second one. And the third one I have here is Exodus chapter 12, verse 21. And this is dealing with the Passover, but in here it's not, the word kill is not used in the sense of a person. All right, it's more so slaughter. So Exodus 21 and Exodus 12 and 21. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover, which is the lamb. So now when we look up the word kill over here, you'll find out that it's also another Hebrew word. which is shachat. All right, if I'm pronouncing that right, that would be shachat. And it says here to kill, slaughter. It says to slaughter beast for food, sacrifice, person and human sacrifice, to be slaughtered, to be slain of food or sacrifice. So you have ratazach, which is murder, and then mawath, which is like death that's not murder, like being put to death, that's not murder. So you probably went off, okay? And then you have shachat, which is to slaughter, like dealing with an animal, okay? So when you see the word kill in the scriptures, it's also important to know what the Hebrew word for it is so you can understand how it's being used. All right. Now, with that being said, when dealing with that question that was asked by the individual, in the time of Jacob's trouble, if you have to defend yourself, then you have to defend yourself. And whatever comes of that, comes of that. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you throughout the scriptures different accounts in which um, individuals took other individuals' lives, but it wasn't considered murder based on the situation that they were in. So you might be put in a situation where maybe the life of you or your family is in danger, and the only way to survive that is to maybe do what you got to do. Then at that point, if that's the spirit the Lord puts on you, then that's the spirit He puts on you, and that's just how it goes. Okay, because that's like what the Maccabees decided when they said, look, we can't just sit here and just let these people slay us, because then pretty much the law and all that is just gonna pass away. So we have to fight back. And in fighting back, that included putting the other side, members of the other side, to death or sending them to the spirit world. Okay. So, you do what you got to do ultimately, because the scriptures say man's goings are of the Lord. Now, if the Lord gives you spiritual power, for example, right? See, say that it says, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against you. Matter of fact, that is made me think about Samson. When the Philistines shouted at Samson, and the scriptures say the spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. So you could say his spiritual power got activated, and he took the jawbone of an ass. It says what? He slew 1,000 of them with the jawbone of an ass. And that was in defense. That was in self-defense. So now the Lord didn't look at Samson and say, hey, you're a murderer. You just slew 1,000 people. No, because he was defending himself. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. An example of the Lord, say the Lord in that time, He just gives you the ability to shoot fire out your hands or out your eyes or something. And here it is. There's 200, 500, 1,000 troops surrounding your building ready to break in. They got guns ready and they have orders to kill on sight. If the Lord blesses you with power, what are you going to do? Sit down and talk to them? No. You're going to have to defend yourself. So if there's bullets flying at you and you beaming lasers out your eyes, those lasers are clearly going to do some heavy damage, probably just cut a whole bunch of them in half. That's just. So ultimately, that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm just going to show and highlight the different instances to give you a better idea. Okay, but like I said, if you got to defend yourself, you got to defend yourself. You're going to sit there and say, all right, well, you come kill my family and kill me too, because you know what? I can't, hey, so let's see what the next precept I have here is in the book of Exodus, because now there's also an account in Exodus, the 22nd chapter, dealing with a thief. Because if a thief breaks into your house, let's read that. This is Exodus chapter 22, verse 1. It says, if a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. Verse 2, if a thief be found breaking up, what it means by breaking up is you catch the dude breaking in, right? And meaning he's caught in the act of, he's a burglar, he's breaking in, and be smitten that he die, there shall no blood be shed for him. Meaning that if a thief is breaking into your house and you end up putting him to death, you're not gonna have to pay the consequence. Like you're not gonna lose your life for that. They're not gonna shed your blood because you shed his, because he was breaking into your crib. All right. And let's look at the different commentaries on that. The New King James Version, it says, if the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. You see? It says, if a thief is caught, the NLT, in the act of breaking into a house and is struck and killed in the process, the person who killed the thief is not guilty of murder. See, so there we go. That's another case of defending yourself or property. So in this time, the scriptures tell you in the book of Second Esdras that men are going to be invading one another. So if you're in your house and somebody's trying to invade, they're trying to break into your crib to harm you or your family, and you end up defending yourself, and that ends up leaving them in the spirit world, well, then that's that. Okay? But it says here, verse 3, if the sun be risen upon him, there shall be blood shed for him, for he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. Meaning that if this happens at night, is a different story. But if this happens in the daytime, then you're guilty of it. Okay, because when you, once again, you look at the other translation, it'll tell you here, the NLT, it says, but if it happens in daylight, the one who killed the thief is guilty of murder. A thief who is caught must pay in full for everything he stole. If he cannot pay, he must be sold as a slave to pay for his theft. Because at night, you can't really see the person. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what he has on him. So it's a different story. Okay, but there's one instance of, in essence, self-defense. Okay. So the next one is Slakic. Let's see. All right. So now let's go here to the book of Second Samuel, chapter 1, verse 1. Let's go here real quick. There we go. Now, Second Samuel chapter 1, verse 1, this is dealing with David finding out about Saul's death. And we know that Saul ended up dying. Yep. That's a good precept too. HREL, Second Samuel 23 and 20. That's a good one. And I see Yeromia Gabar, Numbers 35. I'm gonna bring that out too. Some good precepts, brothers, are putting on here. Nice. Right. So Second Samuel chapter 1, verse 1. It says, now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites. Oh, whoa. Hold on a second. David had returned from the what? The slaughter of the Amalekites. Why was David not considered a murderer for all the other deaths, with the exception of Uriah the Hittite? It says, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag. Now, another thing to think about is also, well, what about when the Lord told us to go and slay all the people, when he had us being led by Joshua and we had to go slay the inhabitants of the land of Canaan? We literally went up in there and slew people, men, women, children, with the sword. And the Lord said to smite the city with the edge of the sword. So, and that was very vivid and detailed. You go in there, you slitting throats, you stabbing, and what was that about? Verse 2. It says, it came to pass on the third day that, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent and earth upon his head. And so it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the earth and did obeisance. He bowed. And David said unto him, from whence comest thou? And he said unto him, out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. And David said unto him, how went the matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, that the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are fallen and dead. And Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called unto me, and I answered, Here am I. And he said unto me, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said unto me again, Stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. Then David took hold on his clothes and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him. And it shows you that King David was of a pure heart, because even after everything Saul had done to David and had tried to do to David, I mean, he came for his life, constantly chasing him for whenever he heard word of where David was, he came after him. And there were times when David narrowly escaped. When Saul threw that javelin, that could have killed David. So to have such close encounters with somebody that wanted to slay you, and yet to have such a reaction upon hearing about their death, that shows you that he had that pure heart. So it says, continuing, verse 12, and they mourned and wept and fasted until even for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. And David said unto the young man that told him, Whence art thou? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite. And David said unto him, How was thou not afraid to stretch forth thine hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? And David called, now here's the key part. And David called one of the young men and said, Go near and fall upon him. And he smote him that he died. So, boom, just like that, David just put him to death. So now, here's an account of, upon King David's command, this Amalekite was put to death. But see, David wasn't considered a murderer, because not every instance of somebody's life being taken makes the person that took the life a murderer, meaning that they're going off. Okay, verse 16. And David said unto him, Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth hath testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. Okay, so that's that on this account. Now let's move on to the next one. And the next one is going to be here in the Apocrypha. Let's go. And this is in, this is in the book of Maccabees. Let's see, Second Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 18. And this is dealing with Mattathias during the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, as he was pushing that Hellenistic ideals upon Jake. Let's see. Second Maccabees chapter 2, verse 18. It says, as he promised the law. Let's see, let me make sure it's the right one. Nope, hold on 1 second. I think maybe I got the wrong one. Let's see. Rains trembled. Slocky, just give me 1 second. There we go. It's First Maccabees 2 and 18, not Second Maccabees. First Maccabees. All right. So let's get this account. And like I said, this is the account of Antiochus Epiphanes sending his officers. Well, let's actually read it. Now, this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 17. And it says, Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise. Now, Mattathias was a priest, and basically a ruler. It says, "Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done. Yea, the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards." Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, "Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law of and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left." Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. And I believe they had to sacrifice swine upon the altar. It says, "Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down." Okay, so here is an account of Mattathias putting an Israelite and the king's commissioner to death. Why? Because they were, first off, that jig was going to go off, but that it says that he was inflamed with zeal. Okay, so much so that he ran, and he slew that Israelite upon the altar. So once again, why was not Mattathias considered a murderer? Because it's to prove the point that not every killing is murder. Okay, it's not as though, now see, if Mattathias was, I don't know, maybe Mattathias might have seen an Israelite. He didn't really like the guy too much. The guy was giving him looks, and he didn't really like him. So he told his son, "Yo, Judas, yo, take this guy out. In the night at this time, take his ass out." That's a different story. That's murder. And an example would be like what Haman, the Edomite, wanted to do to Jake. All right. So continuing, it says, where we at? Oh, I just read this. So actually, let me read a little bit more right here. Verse 25, it says, "Also the king's commandment." Oh, Slakia, I read that. Verse 26, "Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom." So here, Mattathias is recognized for dealing zealously, not for being a murderer. You see, so we got an account about, for example, a thief breaking in and you defending yourself, and you're not, and if it happens to where he's, the thief goes down, then he goes down. If it takes place at nighttime, okay. But now I'm gonna get another account, and this one is dealing with a case where an individual is being pursued by another individual. Okay, so you could also call this a case of self-defense, in which somebody's life was taken. So let's start off here. Uh, 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 17. It says, and there was now this was dealing with when there was the battle between the house of David and the house of Saul, where Abner had led, I believe, the tribe of Benjamin, you know, and there was the, I think Joab was the head leading the armies of David, and Abner was the head leading those of the other tribe, and they basically went at it. They were fighting each other, right? So Second Samuel chapter 2 verse 17, it says, and there was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten, and the men of Israel before the servants of David. And there were three sons of Zeruiah there, Joab and Abishai and Asahel, and they were brothers. And Asahel was as light of foot as a wild roe, meaning he was very fast. Okay. It says, and Asahel pursued Abner, and in going he turned not to the right hand nor to the left from following Abner. So he kept chasing Abner. He didn't stop. He didn't get distracted. He didn't move left or right. He was dead set on taking out Abner. Then Abner looked behind him and said, art thou Asahel? And he answered, I am. So meaning that Abner had to have been moved. Obviously, if the dude is after you, you moving up ahead as well. You're not just standing there, right? So as he's going, he turns around and he asks him. He said, yeah, I am. And you know it. Verse 21, and Abner said unto him, turn thee aside to thy right hand or to thy left, and lay hold on one of the young men, and take thee his armor. But Asahel would not turn aside from following of him. And Abner said again to Asahel, turn thee aside from following me, wherefore should I smite thee to the ground? How then should I hold up my face to Joab thy brother? Howbeit he refused to turn aside. So he gave him one warning. He gave him a second warning. And yet he was still pursuing him. And he didn't stop. He didn't turn. Wherefore Abner with the hinder end of the spear smote him under the fifth rib, that the spear came out behind him. And he fell down there and died in the same place. And it came to pass that as many as came to the place where Asahel fell or fell down and died stood still. So just like that, he was put to death as well. Now, it's possible that he could have been chasing him, and he's running and because for him to just smite him with the spear for it to go through, for it to go, because if somebody just is looking at you, you're looking at him, and he's about to stab you with a spear, you'd be able to see that coming, but for it to go straight through you to where it appears behind you, that means you had that there had to be some momentum in there somewhere, like an unexpected, strike. Okay. But nevertheless, here's an account. As you can see, Abner warns him once and twice, and yet he's still pursuing him. He's still following him. And so he ends up stabbing him with his spear and putting him to death. Now, I believe there's also another account. And like I said, these are all just various accounts. Now Abner, after this was done, let's go to 2 Samuel, the 3rd chapter, because after this was done, once again, Abner wasn't put to death for being a murderer. They didn't say, oh, you murdered Asahel, so we're gonna put your ass to death. Because when you read after this had taken place, 2 Samuel 3 and 12, it says here, and Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, whose is the land? Saying also, make thy league with me. Behold, my hand shall be with thee to bring about all Israel unto thee. So now let's see if David is going to say, nah, you a murderer and you killed Asahel, you murdered him. So I'm going to find you and put you to death. Verse 13, it says, and he said, well, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. See, so he said, look, yeah, I'll make a league with you, but first you got to bring me the woman that I gained from Saul, because he gained that from the foreskins, right? So he said, you first got you bring her ass back, and then we're gonna be good. So once again, here's an account. Not, but Abner put Asahel to death. He stabbed him, and the dude and Asahel died. So why was he not considered a murder? Why didn't they bring him and say, oh, according to the law, you murdered him, and we got to put you to death? Because that was a case where you could say it was in self-defense. All right, it wasn't a case where you stood. I'm watching this guy, or maybe I'm envious of what this guy has, and so I'm gonna slay him for it. Or I'm gonna I'm gonna stick this guy up, but then he's resistant. So I'm put him to death and then steal his stuff. Those are different. Those are different instances. Okay, and those are different accounts, and that is actually considered murder. Okay, now to finish it off, let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 35, verse 11. All right, Numbers 35 and 11. It says, "Then shall ye appoint." Now, this is in the law dealing with cases of death, cases of cases in where people's lives are taken. How do you go about handling it based on what happened? So, and this will be my last precept, but this is the book of Numbers, chapter 35, verse 11. It says, "Then ye shall appoint you cities to be cities of refuge for you, that the slayer may flee thither, which killeth any person at unawares." So if you kill somebody unintentionally, there would be a city of refuge where you could actually flee and basically go there, and then you would be good, you would be safe. Verse 12, it says, "And they shall be unto you for refuge from the avenger," which would be the one that wants to take your life because you took maybe the life of his loved one. It says that the manslayer die not until he stand before the congregation in judgment. So say you accidentally kill somebody and you flee to this refuge city. The avenger, which is maybe the person's brother or the person's father, they can't touch you once you're in that city of refuge until, and then of course your case is going to be heard in the congregation, and they're going to find out, okay, was this murder or was this actually accidental? Verse 13, "And of these cities which ye shall give, 6 cities shall ye have for refuge. Ye shall give 3 cities on this side Jordan, and 3 cities shall ye give in the land of Canaan, which shall be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall be a refuge both for the children of Israel, and for the stranger, and for the sojourner among them, that every one that killeth any person unawares may flee thither. And if he smite him with an instrument of iron, so that he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." So you premeditated and you put him to death, you're gonna be put to death. It said, because murder is a sin unto death. It says, "And if he smite him with a throwing stone wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." So you get a brick or whatever, you kill him with the intent of killing him, you're gonna be put to death. Or if he smite him with an hand weapon of wood, wherewith, now the key part is wherewith he may die, meaning you're doing it with the intent that I want to put this guy to death. It's not out of self-defense. It's not because the guy broke any laws and it was a law unto death, but you have it out for the guy, and so you smite them to kill them. That's murder. That's why what Cain did to Abel was murder. It says, "And he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." Verse 19, "The revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him." See, so the revenger, let's look up revenger and see if they give us anything more. It says here, Gaal, to redeem, act as a kinsman redeemer, avenge, revenge. It says here, by marrying brother's widow to beget a child for him, to redeem from slavery, to redeem land, to exact vengeance. Yeah. So, like I said, pretty much, like somebody next of kin that you may have put somebody's brother to death, so then they coming for you. So if it was actual murder, then guess what? That's that eye for an eye. That's when you would be taken, and the revenger would put your ass to death. Okay. Verse 20. It says, and if he thrust him of hatred or hurl at him by laying of weight that he die, or in enmity smite him with his hand that he die, he that smote him shall surely be put to death. See, so man, I freaking hate this guy. I don't like this guy. Whatever, right? So you says laying in wait. You've planned it. If you do it and you put him to death, you gonna be put to death. For he is a murderer. The revenger of blood shall slay the murderer when he meeteth him. So he gonna come looking for you. And when he finds you, you already know what's gonna happen to you. Verse 22, but if he thrust him suddenly without enmity, right? Or have cast upon him anything without laying of weight. So maybe you push the guy and then, and then you pushed him and then he tripped and then he hit his head on like a rock or something and just died. And you ain't push him with the intent of killing him. That's a different story, right? It says, or have cast upon him anything without laying of weight. So anything that you did that may have caused them to die, but you didn't plan it out. It's not like you set it up. You ain't set him up. You ain't do anything like that. Then it says, or with any stone wherewith a man may die, seeing him not and casting it upon him that he die, and was not his enemy, neither sought his harm. So you throw a stone, but you ain't see the person there, and then it kills the guy, and you didn't do it because he's your enemy or you dislike him or he had it out for him, right? And you ain't try to hurt him or anything. It says, then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the revenger of blood according to these judgments. And the congregation shall deliver the slayer out of the hand of the revenger of blood. So you're gonna basically, you can't put the guy to death. And the congregation shall restore him to the city of his refuge, whither he was fled, and he shall abide in it until the death of the high priest, which was anointed with the holy oil. So if the person that accidentally killed the other person, you're gonna have to be in the city of refuge that you fled to, and you're gonna have to stay there until that high priest, who was anointed with oil, dies. If he's not dead, you can't leave that city. Verse 26. But if the slayer shall at any time, so the slayer is the one who committed the act, at any time come without the border of the city of his refuge. So if you leave the vicinity of the border, the area where you're the safe zone, so to speak, it says whither he was fled, and the revenger of blood find him without the borders of the city of his refuge, and the revenger of blood kill the slayer, he shall not be guilty of blood. So, because look, say you kill somebody that's close to somebody else, right? You accidentally kill somebody's wife or their son, or their child, and they really want your ass. Them being told, yo, it was an accident, he's good now, that's not just automatically going to cool down their blood. So they may knowing that, if so they're like, all right, so long as he's in that refuge city, I can't touch him. But let this guy slip up and let me catch you. Let me catch you outside the city and see what I'm gonna do to you. And your dumb ass say, oh, I'm gonna step out this city, and he catches you. Well, you did it at your own risk. So if he catches you and he puts you to death, he's not guilty. Verse 28, it says, so it says here, he's not going to be guilty. Why? Because he should have remained in the city of his refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer shall return into the land of his possession. So if the city of refuge is in like Albany, right, or like upstate New York, and you in Brooklyn, and you flee over there, you got to stay there till the high priest dies. If you leave, you try to go to Jersey or you try to come downward and you get caught, your ass is grass. But if you listen and you stay there, then when you got to stay up in upstate New York, the refuge city, until the high priest dies. And when he dies, then you can go back to Brooklyn. It says, so these things shall be for a statute of judgment unto you throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses, but one witness shall not testify against any person to cause him to die. So if there's going to be a witness, it has to be more than one. Okay. Verse 31, moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction, meaning a bribery, for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall be surely put to death. So you don't acquit the wicked or acquit a murderer. Verse 32, and ye shall take no satisfaction for him that is fled to the city of his refuge, that he should come again to dwell in the land until the death of the high priest. Meaning, when it says satisfaction, it's talking about like a bribe. So the dude says, "Oh, I'll pay you such and such. You know, just let me just go back." Nah, all right. If you do it and if you sneak and you do whatever, that's at your own risk. Verse 33, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. Defile not therefore the land which ye shall inhabit, wherein I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the children of Israel. See, that's a precept right there. We got to bring out more often. Numbers 35 and 34. The Lord said, look, I, the Lord, dwell among the children of Israel. That's it. You know, we didn't put that into the Lord's mouth. He said it. Okay, so pretty much coming back to the question that's here, what Donald Castro asked, in them days when all hell breaks loose, I know the scripts say don't kill. Well, you're not supposed to murder, okay? Which we went through precepts and clarified that. But what about if you're in a situation where that might happen? Well, if that being, I'm assuming he's talking about putting somebody to death where you got to like defend yourself, or you were in a position where you had no other option. It was like your life or theirs, or your family's life or theirs kind of situation. It says, would that be going off? I mean, are we allowed to defend ourselves? Yes, we are allowed to defend ourselves. So in a situation like that, it wouldn't be considered murder, and therefore, no, you wouldn't be going off. And I just showed you through various precepts, different examples of situations where individuals were put to death and it wasn't considered murder, meaning that the individual that put them to death was not guilty of murder. So that individual wasn't going off. Okay, so that pretty much deals with that, and that's the end of the lesson. The water, I know brothers were putting some nice, banging precepts on here, and so it's lucky I wasn't able to, really hit them like that. But Lord willing, the lesson was still edifying anyway. And so with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Brakah Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.